Yo, what's going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome back to the Fantasy Headliners. I'm here with my tight end rankings. So sorry that they're late this week. I actually got in the groove of redoing the studio, revamping it a little bit, moving around some things, bringing in the PS5, kind of cramped it a little bit more. So I had to readjust some things. And if you see it looks a little bit different behind me, it's because it does. So, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize if this got to you a little bit later than normal, but had to get the studio reworked so I could produce some fire content for all of you. So let's go ahead and jump into it, and we'll start at number 20 for tight ends. Number 20, Tyler Higbee. He's a sit for me this week. He's a sit for me this week. Jordan Reed's a sit for me this week. I did have Ross Dwelly as a start, but I'm starting to fade from him a little bit more now. If Kendrick Bourne were to be out for some reason, which it doesn't look like he is, Deebo Samuel, we still haven't heard for sure that he is going to be out, although now at this point it does look like he is as well. Ross Dwelly could see a little bit of volume, but Tyler Higbee is a sit, Jordan Reed's a sit, Hunter Henry's a sit, Jonnu Smith is a sit. I had some sits this week that normally I don't have as sits. Now, going back to Tyler Higbee real quick, with him and Everett on the field together, the volume just hasn't been there for him this year. It's been hit or miss. Sometimes he has a decent game, sometimes he doesn't. Really, he's only had one big game so far this year, and that's why he just hasn't been able to produce the way we thought. It's because this offense has kind of gone back and forth between whether or not they're running 12 personnel or they're going to put one tight end on the field. Everett was hurt, now he's back. So we've just seen a whole lot of everything. Higbee was even hurt for a week as well. Jordan Reed, I'm a little bit skeptical on him getting a huge snap share, just with, again, the injuries that continue to be an issue for him. San Francisco, they've dealt with so many injuries. Do they take it easy this week and still just try to ease him back a little bit and a little bit? That's why I think Ross Dwelly, Jordan Reed for me, like in a standard league, might be a decent start because I think he could score a touchdown. But I think Ross Dwelly will be the guy that gets a good amount of volume this week. Hunter Henry for me, it hurts me to put him as a sit this week, but I have to. I have to go with a sit. I think the matchup for the wide receivers is just way too good. And on top of that, he's not getting any touchdowns. The volume actually isn't that bad. The volume itself has been pretty decent so far. However, he's just not turning in the amount of big plays that you would like to see, and he's not scoring any touchdowns. Jonnu Smith, I had him listed as a start or a sit this week. He ended up scoring that touchdown, but he still did not get 10 half PPR points. So Jonnu Smith ended up being a hit for me this week. But if you had to play him, he still didn't have a bad week for you. It could have been a lot worse. Logan Thomas at 15, a guy that is my kryptonite this year. You know, I think he has a good matchup. I list him as a start. He ends up being a sit. You know, I think it's a tough matchup, or he's not being used the way he should be. List him as a sit. He ends up being a start. So really going back and forth on him. That's why he's a little bit lower right now, just because I don't trust him to be, you know, that type of player, that type of consistent tight end on a weekly basis. Jimmy Graham at number 14, another guy who we thought was going to be a tight end savior this week, just hasn't been able to produce really since the start of the season when he was seeing, but he's still being targeted on that team. He's still second in that team in targets right now. They're still looking at him quite often, so it's hard not to play him on a weekly basis unless you have somebody with a lot higher upside. Mike Gesicki. My hope is that as Tua continues to really get back into form, we'll see him use Mike Gesicki a little bit more often, especially with no Preston Williams this week. Mike Gesicki could be a guy that definitely has some nice touchdown upside. Jared Cook at number 12. Jared Cook, was doing really well when the injuries hit, and he was not able to, when the injuries hit and Drew Brees was not able to spread the ball around. However, now that people are starting to get back healthy, feeling better, now Jared Cook isn't necessarily as volume dependent as he once was. So Jared Cook, for me, really has to score a touchdown each week. Robert Tonyan has a really, really good matchup this week, and it will be the last week that I plan on using him. Allen Lazard does not sound like he's going to get back now this week. Again, I said that in the start-sit video that it didn't sound like he was going to be able to be back this week. We ended up being on the nose with that. Lazard seems to be trending towards being out, which is going to give Tonyan one more week of fantasy viable start. Now, when Lazard gets back, though, we're basically done with Tunyon, unfortunately. We'll have to move on from him. And even this week, 11 might be a little bit high. We got to hope for some reason or another he can find the end zone. At number 10, Trey Burton, that ended up being a miss. Unfortunately, Mo Alley Cox was beat up. Jack Mother and Doyle, he ended up being out with a concussion. Really thought Trey Burton in that matchup could go up against the Tennessee Titans fairly well, and Phillip Rivers would be targeting. However, hey, Nyheim Hines decided to have another big game. Again, Michael Pittman Jr. broke out as well. That was one that I went back and forth with in the wide receivers. He ended up having a very good game, so it limited Trey Burton. So that one was a miss for me. But I had him at 10 before the game started. I put him in here. I don't hide anything from y'all. Austin Hooper in his first game back, we're going to be rolling with him. Good matchup for him. No more OBJ. Now he gets a chance to be a little bit more of a pass catcher in that offense. Rob Gronkowski, unfortunately, we got to start bumping him down now that they've got Chris Godwin back. Now that they've got Antonio Brown on the team, Rob Gronkowski just isn't a guy that is a reliable option every single week. Like a lot of touchdowns right now, he's touchdown, or like a lot of tight ends right now, he's touchdown dependent. Just like Mark Andrews at number 7 has been. He's really touchdown dependent right now as well. Unfortunately, he's just not putting up the volume that we saw from him last year. Part of that is Lamar Jackson. I don't know if Lamar Jackson, has just taken a step back. I don't know if Lamar Jackson is just not as confident in himself as he was last year. A lot of different things could come into play there. But Mark Andrews, again, a guy very touchdown dependent. The guys that are up above here now, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, Eric Ebron, Evan Ingram, Dallas Goedert, Noah Fant, TJ Hockenson, Darren Waller, all these guys, yes, we'd love to see touchdowns out of them, but all of them have potentially a lot of volume this week as well. Eric Ebron at number 6, I'd like to go higher, but he is the guy that is the least that has the least chance at the volume, because this is a really good matchup for the wide receivers, and because of that, Eric Ebron could be on the outside looking in. But going up against Cincinnati, the team that allows the second most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends, and Ben Roethlisberger has been looking towards Eric Ebron this year as well. In these situations that present good touchdown upside. Okay, he's been looking Eric Ebron's way there. So he has touchdowns in back-to-back games now in weeks 8 and 9 against Baltimore and Dallas. Now he gets a Cincinnati team that allows the second most fantasy points per game. He's my Manscaped must-start of the week. Over the last 3 weeks, he has 8, 5, and 6 targets in the passing game. So he is being used by Big Ben. This could be a week, again, in a really nice matchup. He has a great day. Evan Ingram at number 5. They have really been using Evan Ingram a lot more as well. I mean, this is a guy that, at the beginning of the year, if you would have told me that Evan Ingram would have been healthy all season long, played in every single game, I would have told you, damn, Evan Ingram is a top 5 tight end at least. That didn't happen. But back in week 6 it was, after a 2-catch, 30-yard performance against Washington, everyone basically said that they were done with him. I did say going into the next week against Philadelphia, he was going to be a sit. But since that game, in week 7, 8, and 9, he has 29 targets. That is over the last 3 games, 29 targets. Okay? So even though he's getting a lot of targets, we'd like to see some more receptions. Only 6, 5, and 5 in receptions, 46, 61, 48 in yards, and had the touchdown last week. So the volume is there. And at the tight end position, with it being basically a hunk of mess this week, bad matchups for a lot of guys that we used to depend on a few weeks ago that we can no longer do that, injuries, bye weeks, all of that. Evan Ingram has as high as upside as anybody this week going up against Philadelphia. At number 4, Dallas Goedert. Also in that matchup, Dallas Goedert back. And the nice thing about Dallas Goedert being back is that you have Travis Fulgham, you have Alshon Jeffrey back, you have Jalen Reagor healthy finally. To me, that helps Dallas Goedert. He doesn't need to be the guy that is the number 1 target on the field. If he's got other guys that can help take that pressure off of him, that makes him an easy target for Carson Wentz. If Carson Wentz has other people spreading out across the field with these other wide receivers, and Dallas Goedert isn't being focused in the middle of the field, that leaves a lot more open room for him. So for Dallas Goedert right there, I like that matchup. At number 3, Noah Fant. We had him as our must start last week. Didn't end up having the upside that we would have hoped. Okay, didn't end up going as high as we would have hoped last week. 3 receptions for 45 yards. That was it against an Atlanta team that really gives up a ton of fantasy points to opposing tight ends. So, unfortunately, that didn't come to fruition last week. Now we get the Las Vegas Raiders. There could be some trouble on the outside this week, allowing Noah Fant a little bit of more room on the inside. TJ Hockenson at number 2. TJ Hockenson we have to keep an eye on. He did not end up practicing the last couple of days with an ankle injury and is now listed as questionable. If he plays, he's definitely a must start for us. We've got to get him on our lineups. He can go as high as number 2 for me. But if he ends up being out this week, that's an even bigger blow to this week in tight ends. And then, of course, at number 1, Darren Waller, the man himself, the guy that just continues to produce on a consistent basis and needs to start being included with those top tier tight ends, I believe. You talk about Kelsey and Kittle as that 1A tier. We might need to start talking about Darren Waller in that 1A tier as well. There you have it, Headliner Nation, my tight end rankings for this week. Hopefully you're able to get a little bit out of this. It is a tough week for tight end, so I try to get you as much information as possible. Make sure in the rankings videos and the start-sit videos, you're taking that information together and looking at all the matchups, especially since we could end up losing TJ Hockenson. Some of these guys don't have great matchups, so we might have to try and focus our attention elsewhere this week. So make sure you take a look at all of the opportunities out there for you. Headliner Nation, appreciate you tuning in for this video. Do me a favor on the video down below. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you leave a comment if you've got any questions about any of these players. And as always, hit that subscribe button. Become a part of Headliner Nation today. Have a great Saturday, a great week 10. Headliner Nation, appreciate you all. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.